Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. I'm your host, theFellowKGB. You can follow me on Twitter at theFellowKGB. And today it's August 19th. It's a Wednesday afternoon. It's about 6 p.m. in the evening. I'm just going to be making a quick video talking about some of the guys that I have just not been drafting at ADP. Some guys that I see them going in, whether it's the 4th or 5th, 6th round, that people are depending on these guys to be built heavy core pieces of the roster, and I'm just not really interested in some of these guys. So we're not really going to be looking at too much of the guys towards the top of the draft. I think a lot of those guys all have cases, and they're deservingly so to be up there in the top part of the draft. So we're looking at Fantasy Pros, ADP. The thing about them is they have a nice collection of other sports sites here. So I think that's ESPN, that's Roto Sports, and Fantrax. I wish they got the MFL in here, but they do a good job of showing other ADPs and getting the average of all of these. So it's kind of like a consensus ADP. So really, if you're navigating the first round, I mean, the first 4 running backs are kind of all, in a tier of their own, whether it's McCaffrey, Barkley, Elliott, and Kamara. And that's, I'm basically in lockstep with these guys in my rankings here. So these are my running back rankings. Those are my first 4 backs. And then I have Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook next. I think those are kind of the consensus top 6 running backs. And you see those guys here. You're going to see Michael Thomas go somewhere, maybe as high as 4, sometimes as low as 7 or 8, and then Devontae Adams. So it's really those 6 running backs and plus those 2 receivers. I think those are the consensus top 8. I don't really care what spot they get drafted in. Those are pretty much the dudes that you're looking for there. So none of those guys are terrible picks. I did see Dalvin Cook broke off contract talks. We'll worry about that when we get there. We still have, 3 or 4 weeks of practice yet before week 1. So I'm optimistic something will get done. If Dalvin Cook falls to 7 or 8 in my draft, I think I'm still taking him. So if you're drafting soon and he's still not signed, I would lean towards him getting a deal done. He's not going to miss any of his prime running back years and hopefully get a new contract. So those are really the top 8 guys. And then after that is when it gets kind of, the 8th and 9th spots. That's when it really gets a little woolly, and you can start to take guys, at that certain, it's kind of a risky thing, but at 9 overall here, they have DeAndre Hopkins, and that is the guy, I guess he's probably the first one that I'm going to talk about because on my receivers, I don't have him. I have him as the 10th best receiver. I don't really see DeAndre Hopkins having top 5 upside this year. I think he's got top 10 upside, and I just have him inside the top 10 here. But they got him being as the wide receiver 3 here, and I don't really know if I agree with that. I would take Tyreek Hill, Julio Jones, and probably Chris Godwin over him for sure. So I'm probably not taking DeAndre Hopkins in the first round. The times that I have gotten Hopkins, it's been in the 19 to 23 range where he falls at the end of the second. So I'm probably not taking DeAndre Hopkins in the first round of my draft. We'll go back to overall ADP here. Tyreek Hill, I think, has got a first-round grade. Julio Jones has a first-round grade. Joe Mixon has a first-round grade. Miles Sanders, he did get the little he's basically on like a week-to-week injury report basis where they just said it was an undisclosed lower injury, but he appears to be fine. It's not a serious injury, so I'm not going to knock him for that. I still think he's got, he's definitely a top 10 upside running back this year. And just with PPR leagues, you can probably get him in. I mean, if he falls to that 12 spot, I think that's where you have to really think about him because are you going to pass on him twice? I don't know if I would do that. So I think Sanders belongs as an end of the first round talent. And those are really the guys that I feel good about. So I'm not going to put Hopkins in there, but I would throw Sanders into that top 12. If we look quick at my best available flex players, and we'll kind of see how this works out. So with Nick Chubb's concussion injury, I really haven't updated my rankings too much, but I have Nick Chubb here as a low-end first-round grade, and I got Josh Jacobs, who I might take Tyreek Hill and Julio Jones over Jacobs, so that I might, mess with those numbers a little bit. Or actually here, I got to delete this running back spot. Let me refilter that real quick. So yeah, I got Tyreek here at 12. Nick Chubb and Josh Jacobs. These guys, these Sanders, Chubb, and Jacobs, if I can get 2 of those backs, that's been probably my favorite way to do drafts. So I'm really into those guys. And whether you have to take Sanders at 10-11 and you come back and get Chubb or Jacobs on the turnaround, I think that's a really good way of starting your draft. But yeah, Tyreek Hill, Julio Jones, I have no problem with those guys. Some other guys here that are high on ADP here. So we're up to Kenyon Drake. He's at 15 here. Where I have Kenyon Drake going is I have him as my 27th best flex player. I'm really not too sure If I want to take him that high in the second round, I think I would prefer Austin Eckler, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones. I mean, I like Kenyon Drake, but I'm probably not taking him at 15th overall. It's going to probably be somewhere in this 20 to 21 range. And then as you see here, I got him as my 27th best flex player. So Kenyon Drake's not really a guy that I'm taking at ADP right now. I think Austin Eckler has a fair ADP here of 16, especially in a PPR league. I mean, if you see here, I have him as my 15th best player. So I like Eckler in the mid-second to be your RB2. He looks great as your RB2. So if you can start your draft with Derrick Henry or Dalvin Cook in the middle of the first and come back and get Eckler, I think that's a really good way to look at it. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's probably a first-round talent too. If I look and see where I have Clyde Edwards, I have him as the 19th best overall player. And then at my running backs, I do have him as my RB13. So I kind of cooled off on Clyde Edwards just a little bit because I just feel like the guys above here are safer. We really don't know what to expect from Clyde Edwards. We're really excited about the opportunity, but I've kind of pulled back on him. I think he looks best as your RB2. But if you have to take him in the first round to do it, you could do that and pair him with a Chubb or a Mixon or something like that. So we're just going to keep navigating the rounds here. I love Chris Godwin. You can get him in the second round and bank on him being a potential top 5 receiver again. Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones, these are two of my favorite second-round running backs. Just the strategy I've been laying out this year, if you've seen some of my other videos, is I like to take a running back in the first round, and then I love getting whether it's Jacobs or Jones in the second round. I think these guys are top 12 running backs this year. You know, they have top 12 upside, but I mean, they look so good as your RB2, and they kind of mitigate the risk there. Because if you take a receiver and then you're banking on Jacobs or Jones to be your RB1, that's kind of taking them at, their ceiling play. Whereas if you plug them into your RB2, you still have that stud running back to hopefully hold it up. And you got this really good potential back here as your RB2. So I love both of those guys. Lamar Jackson, I'm not going to argue. If Lamar Jackson goes like 11th or 10th overall, you're not going to blink because he's one of the best players in the game right now. So I'm fine with Lamar Jackson at any spot in the draft. Maybe outside of the top 8, you're probably not going to take him there. But 9, 10, sure, whatever. I did pass up on Travis Kelce here. I'm still probably taking the running backs over Travis Kelce here. If I'm going to pull Kelce, it's probably going to be after Jacobs, Jones, and Eckler and Drake are gone. So I would put Kelce's value here in the 20s. George Kittle, same thing. I wait till the running backs are gone. And then after the running backs go, that's when you start to think about Mahomes, Lamar, Kittle, Kelce. That's where their values start to pop. Because after this 24, basically these guys are all top 24 picks. I might argue DeAndre Hopkins should be out of here because I'd rather have Kenny Golladay, Mike Evans, even Allen Robinson, DJ Moore. I'd rather have those guys over DeAndre Hopkins this year. Don't get me wrong. I love DeAndre Hopkins, but I'm just a little nervous about the change. He's been so good with Deshaun Watson. I think Watson's a better passer than Kyler Murray. But the thing that's going for Hopkins is I think he's going to a better passing offense. The coach there, he knows what he's doing. I can't remember the coach's name for some stupid reason, so I got to look that up real quick. What's his name? Cliff Kingsbury. So I think Cliff Kingsbury is going to be able to scheme him with plays a little bit better than Bill O'Brien was. So I think there could be a better efficiency year for him. But I struggle to see him getting the volume that he got in Houston. They still have a couple of other good players to feed the ball to. So I'll see about DeAndre Hopkins, but I'm not taking him at 9th overall like he's up here. He's going to have to dip down into the 20s after the running backs. So, but from there, we're talking about basically, so the 25th pick is to me, that's like the receiver round because you can get guys like Kenny Golladay, Mike Evans, Allen Robinson, DJ Moore, even Odell, Juju. I would even say Adam Thielen. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I just listed 7 receivers that I would target in the third round. I'm kind of staying away from Amari Cooper in the third round because you can get Michael Gallup later, 3 rounds later. But target all 7 of those receivers, I would say, are easily third round values there because they have wide receiver 1 potential, and it just makes more sense. Like I feel like Leonard Fournette, Todd Gurley, even Chris Carson, Le'Veon Bell, and Melvin Gordon, those guys are kind of gambles. We really don't know what to expect from them. You're buying them in the third round to be basically an RB2 plus. And there's just it just seems like Kenny Galladay, Evans, and Allen Robinson, DJ Moore, those guys are more certain to me. They feel like more like a slam dunk. Whereas with Fournette, Gurley, Carson, all those running backs in the third round, like you're crossing your fingers and hoping it works out for the best. So I would just go with what I know. I'm taking a receiver in the third round. So I'm kind of fading Leonard Fournette, Todd Gurley. I like Chris Carson. If Carson falls, to the fourth round, that's where I kind of get interested. Same with Le'Veon Bell. I know there was a news blurb about Frank Gore being used heavily this year, but with my projections, what I did is, I kind of already accounted for that. When Gase got Gore, he had Gore in Miami, so I know those two have a history of knowing each other and knowing what to expect out of each other. So Le'Veon Bell last year had 245 carries and 78 targets. So what I did was I just took a small percentage of Bell's carries away. I gave him 236 carries. I have him about the same receptions, a little bit more targets, because I think Sam Darnold's going to, if Sam Darnold plays the full season, I think that's only going to help Bell's reception numbers go up just a little tick. So I have, suppressed Le'Veon Bell's touches even just a little bit, but I think he's going to be more efficient on the ground. It's year 2 with the Jets. The offensive line, they invested, I think they got like 3 or 4 new starters with the offensive line, so we'll see if that gels. But it should be better. The team should be better as an offense. So with all that said, I still have Le'Veon Bell being my RB16, which is what he was last year. So I think he's, of those running backs in the third round, I think he's the safest one. You see Chris Carson, Fournette, Gordon, Gurley. Those guys are all kind of down here, whereas I feel okay about Le'Veon Bell. I would say James Conner. If you wanted to get a running back in the third or fourth round, you can snag James Conner at the end of the third or early fourth, because for some reason he's down here as RB45. So I would say if you want to get a mid-round running back, it's James Conner and Le'Veon Bell if he falls a little bit. Because Bell's numbers, last year, I know everyone does not like the Adam Gase offense. They don't want to touch the Jets. But if you just pick Le'Veon Bell, I think he might be falling to the fourth round soon. So that's where he's going to become a value. But if you look at these numbers that he put up last year, this to me looks like an RB2 that I can just count on every week in a PPR league. I think I'm okay with that in the fourth round. If you don't want to do it, I totally understand. But if you kind of didn't get a strong RB2 early, that's kind of where you're looking at. But again, like it's those receivers in the middle rounds that I'm really targeting. So we kind of talked about all those guys. Amari Cooper, I haven't drafted Amari Cooper once this year because I love the Dallas offense, but to pay the price of a round 3 player that you could basically just go ahead and get Michael Gallup in the same stats, basically, you're going to get him in the 6th round. So I know we're kind of talking about players that we don't want to target, but with Amari Cooper, he was wide receiver 10 last year. He averaged 15.4 points per game, and he did play a full 16. But you got Michael Gallup down here, who was wide receiver 24. He missed 2 games. He played 14 games, but he averaged 15.2 fantasy points per game. So that's not much of a difference. In 14 games, Gallup's still over 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns. And with Cooper playing 16, he didn't even get 1,200, and he only had 8 touchdowns. So Cooper's going to give you a little bit more catches per game, maybe an extra catch or so. Compared to Gallup, but Gallup's got the deep play. He's got a lot, he's more of a boom bust prospect, but towards the end of the season, Gallup's still going to probably be a top 20 receiver if he finishes, the full 16. So I'm kind of fading Amari Cooper here. I would rather take, one of the other receivers that we mentioned in that area. Zach Ertz, I think Zach Ertz is at the moment right now, I don't really find myself drafting Kelsey or Kittle very often. If I'm going to spend up on a tight end, it's going to be Zach Ertz. Just because the Eagles, they didn't really address the receiver, position. Jalen Reagor's nice, but it's still a rookie receiver. They didn't sign anybody to come in and be the alpha receiver. Alshon Jeffrey's on pup list. So Ertz is one of those guys that I like at ADP here. Cooper Kupp, I'm fine with. And in the beginning of the 4th round, I just talked about Melvin Gordon. There was some really good reports that I read today about Philip Lindsay. One of my favorite fantasy football websites is Football Guys. And if you watch my other video that I just put up yesterday, Cecil Lammey is one of the main guys there that does a lot of the podcasts, and he actually covers the Broncos. And they had a video today talking about Philip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon, basically 50-50 splitting the reps with the ones. They want to get both guys into the comfortable situations that they're in, and it sounds like they're going to kind of eat into each other's workload. So at the moment right now, Melvin Gordon's got an ADP of about wide receiver, running back, round 3 running back, and then Philip Lindsay's in the 10th round, I think. This sun's really messing me up. I'm gonna turn that off real quick. All right, that's much better. So Philip Lindsay, Cecil Lammy was talking about him today. I'm looking for the blurbs that came out. I thought it would have made like a retweet or something. But Lindsay is looking impressive. It sounds like they're going to be good competition between both guys, and it sounds like Melvin Gordon's looking just as impressive. But I mean, to take a running back in the 3rd round, I think I feel so much better about the receivers there. Melvin Gordon looks interesting in the 4th round, I suppose. I'm not taking David Johnson at pick 40. I'd rather some of the other players coming up. A.J. Brown, really boom bust receiver. He could be a good 4th round pick. Some other guys here that I'm avoiding. I got to stick to the topic here. Keenan Allen, I'm not drafting as wide receiver 20. I'm not touching him. He's 47th overall here. If I look quick and see where he's on my receivers, I mean, I got him as wide receiver 29, so that's about 9 spots below ADP. If I look at my flex rankings, that's going to bump him down to player 51. So, I mean, I guess that's not terrible off of his ADP. I have him at 47 here. But again, I have him as my wide receiver 29, so I'm not really interested. I'd rather, get Lockett, Metcalf, even Chark, Parker. There's a handful of other guys. So he's on my list. And I guess I was talking about this for the last handful of videos, but the poster boy of this player I'm not drafting is probably Devin Singletary. He's running back 23 here, pick 49. And I'm not seeing it in Devin Singletary this year. They drafted, so they had Frank Gore last year. Frank Gore leaves. And then they draft essentially Frank Gore's replacement with Zach Moss. Now, Devin Singletary last year rushed 151 times, 775 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then he got some receiving work here, which is nice to see. He scored 4 touchdowns on the year, but now you're bringing in a back here in Zach Moss that is going to he's going to take the Frank Gore role, inside the 20, and then he's going to start to eat into that reception and the target totals of Devin Singletary. So I don't really see a ceiling here for Devin Singletary to get more than 4, 5, 6 touchdowns at the most this year. And then I see the splits. Maybe it's Devin Singletary getting 60% of the work to start the year, but I have a hunch that Zach Moss is a more productive and better player. So at the moment right now, I have Zach Moss projected more in PPR leagues. So I have them basically 50-50 in carries, about the same in yards. But again, I have Zach Moss getting more rushing touchdowns. And then I have them pretty even in receptions. But I just think it's going to be really difficult to get the value on ADP on Devin Singletary. I don't see him being an RB2. Maybe he is the first couple weeks of the season. He had a really nice end of his rookie season. If we look and see what he did, I think he finished where is he? Devin Single. He was RB33 last year, which is fine. He averaged about 12.5 fantasy points per game. And then you see down the stretch here, he started to get it together, 12, a 19, a 17, an 11, 6, and a 19. His biggest game was 23 points. So I don't see him having much of a ceiling. I think his average is going to be 10 to 15 points at best. But you might see some of these games where, you see an 8 for 42 and just a couple receptions here. You see this 8-point game because maybe Zach Moss just is more productive in that game. Or, you have to worry about a hot hand approach where Frank Gore was in his career last year. It was easy to see Devin Singletary deserve more touches and more playtime than Gore. So we're bringing in a back that has just as much draft capital as him. Zach Moss he's a banger. He can catch, he can pass block. I just think Moss is going to really just put a damper in the Devin Singletary hype. So that's probably my number one guy to avoid at ADP. Some other guys here. I mean, I love DK Metcalf. I love Tyler Lockett. We'll talk about those guys in another video later. T.Y. Hilton. I'm not really drafting a lot of T.Y. Hilton this year right now. I'd rather get a Terry McLaurin. I'd rather get even Stefan Diggs maybe, but I'd rather wait on receiver like Tyler Boyd or Marquise Brown or Michael Gallup. So T.Y. Hilton's kind of on my no-fly list. He hasn't been healthy for a while. David Montgomery is on my no-fly list. I'm a Packer fan. I live in Milwaukee. I'm from Green Bay, but I don't see what people like with David Montgomery besides the volume. If you're just drafting a player based on volume, that means you would have liked Kalen Ballage last year. You're not really looking at the player and what he's good at. So he ran 242 times and only rushed for 3.7 yards per carry. I know I was talking about Le'Veon Bell with his 3.2 yards per carry earlier, but Bell has shown us before that he's really good, and the team just didn't have much juice at the offensive line. So, just looking at the top of this, he averaged 10.9 fantasy points per game in PPR, which is fine for an RB2. I think he was RB25 last year. But you come down here and you look at the game logs, and I don't know what week I would be able to recommend you start him. Sure, maybe against Detroit. It looks like he had, but again, he played against Detroit and only got 6 points, and then the next time he gets 16.7. But you just look at the numbers here down the stretch, and you would expect a running back to get better as he goes on in his rookie season. It just wasn't the case. So I'm a little nervous that it's not going to be working out for Montgomery. They might have to be drafting a running back in a year or so. So David Montgomery, Devin Singletary, please avoid both of those guys. I get that. I mean, you could like them, but are you going to take a guy with the upside of Terry McLaurin or even like Kareem Hunt or Tyler Boyd? Like, I'm taking so many other players over these guys in the same range. So no fly list, David Montgomery. Stefan Diggs, I'm not hating on the Bills. I just think there's going to be a lot of mouths to feed. Whereas last year with John Brown being the alpha receiver there, John Brown, and again, John Brown's a little bit different than Stefan Diggs. Stefan Diggs is more finesse. But you see John Brown here finished as the wide receiver 22 with 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. I would say this is Stefan Diggs' ceiling at best. But now you're adding in, think about their offense last year. They had John Brown to throw to. They had Cole Beasley and then maybe Dawson Knox. They didn't have an alpha receiver to compete with John Brown. So now you're adding Diggs, Brown, Beasley. You're going to have the running backs and then Dawson Knox. So you're looking at 5 or 6 weapons now. I don't see the volume here play. I would be surprised if Stefan Diggs is, if he finishes in this 20 to 24 range. I think as it is right now, I have Diggs. I have him as my wide receiver 34, and where he's being drafted, he's wide receiver 27. So I would be, if Stefan Diggs finished wide receiver 27, I would be slightly surprised. So he's kind of on my no-fly list. Any other players? We're not drafting AJ Green. I know I talked him up in a video a little bit ago, but why take AJ Green when you can just get Tyler Boyd a few picks later? Jarvis Landry has not been on my fly list this year. He still hasn't been practicing. He's kind of nursing. I think it was the foot injury or something that he had last year. Let me see if there's any news blurbs on him. So he looks good in practice, but he's not yet ready for a full workload. So he's dealing with that hip. He's going to be back hopefully soon. But I'm kind of just expecting the whole Cleveland offense to be built around the run with Kevin Stefanski. So if you had to ask me what's going to be the calling card for the Browns this year, it's going to be Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. They're going to run the ball as often as they can. So to me, I would just lean towards betting on the running game and not really worry about the passing game there. So in this range, instead of taking a guy like Jarvis Landry, sure, give me Kareem Hunt, give me Tyler Boyd, give me Marquise Brown, even Edelman, Gallup, Ronald Jones, tons of guys here that I would take over Landry and feel a little bit safer about it. You see Evan Ingram here. I'm not really touching a tight end here. I think I did pass up on Mark Andrews. I thought Mark Andrews was pretty high here. He's up here, but I'm not really taking it. I see Mark Andrews as a potential tight end 1, but with him and Ertz, I would take Mark Andrews if he fell into the 50 to 48 range. So I'm into Ertz and Mark Andrews there, but otherwise I'm not taking Darren Waller. I'm not drafting these mid-round tight ends. Some other guys that I'm probably not grabbing. Now it's getting a little tricky. Tyler Higbee, like this, this is the 7th, 8th round where tight ends kind of become, an option. You can grab some of these guys and pair them with someone later. But that's pretty much it. At this point, we kind of talked about, I'll tell you what, it's really easy to make your first 2 picks, your first 2 rounds. It's really easy because there's so many studs available. But when it gets to round 3 and you have to make a decision between a running back and a receiver, that's going to set up what you do the next 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds. So Just please do your due diligence with your third round pick this year. I think you got to snag one of the receivers that I mentioned. And then if you want to, because if you go running back early, you're looking at rounds 3, 4, 5, 6 as, heavy receiver rounds, which are great. And then, Ronald Jones is creeping. If you wanted to get Ronald Jones in the 5th, 6th, I think I'd sign off on that. DeAndre Swift is having some good camp right now. He's a running back that I like. Mark Ingram, Kareem Hunt, J.K. Dobbins. There's running backs, in the 6th, 7th, 8th round that I kind of like. Even Tariq Cohen. I'd rather have Tariq Cohen than David Montgomery. So there's running backs that are available later that I think can help us win our leagues. But again, I just want to stress rounds 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are the rounds that are going to make or break your season for you. So invest in what you know, and just try to avoid any kind of murky situations where there's a lot of, just a lot of uncertainty. I want good players and good offenses, and we'll let the chips fall where they may. But I think that's going to pretty much do it for this video. I'm probably going to do, let's see here, it's Wednesday. I like to get maybe one more video up this week. Again, I'm going to be posting my rankings and my cheat sheet on thefantasyfellowship.com. That's going to be available. If you go to thefantasyfellowship.com, you're going to kind of hover over the 2020 content page and just click redraft rankings. I'm going to post everything. You'll see a big button that says cheat sheet and you can print it. I think I'm going to just post my PPR, and I guess if someone wants a half PPR, I'll probably put that up there too. But I'm going to get the PPR one up there for sure, and we'll go from there. But yeah, man, if you're drafting this weekend, in the comments, let me know. I can get you your PPR, half PPR, standard, whatever you need. Ask questions. We got, only 3 more weekends where we can draft. So we're getting to it. I'm super excited. And yeah, I just want to thank you for your time and for watching the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Peace.